Hello everyone, I am Border, also known as Borderwise, and welcome back to Bad North, roguelike commentary, or RTS commentary, or real-time tactics commentary, whatever the hell this is. Last time I covered this game, and this is the first time I've covered a game twice. Actually, no it isn't, I did Impossible Creatures twice. Anyway, second commentary I've done two of, because last time I covered Bad North, people quite liked me just rambling on about Viking history in the background. So that's basically what this is going to be. We're going to talk some more about Viking history, just reading off Wikipedia just for fun, so that I can be just as surprised as you, assuming things surprise me, which they absolutely will. Don't mind my dudes, I don't do incredibly well in the gameplay, or at least I don't think I do really, because this is the more advanced side of Bad North and things get a little bit difficult. So, in front of me here I have the Wikipedia article on the Vikings, and what I'm going to look at is just a list of historical figures, some of which I have heard of, others I've never heard of before, and we're just going to have a little look-see, and I'm going to read out loud to you, and in the background, enjoy the look of us fending off hordes of savage Northmen. So let's start with Erdekonat. So, Erdekonat, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, like, bear in mind, a lot of the stuff with a lot of this kind of thing, I am not a speaker of Norse languages at all, so I'm going to butcher it a little bit. So, Erdekonat, which looks a lot like coconut, was a Norse king of Northumbria. Numismatic evidence suggests he was a Christian, and he probably ruled in northern England around the year 900. So, already I'm learning things. I was not aware... Actually, no... Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware that, like... Scandinavians were converting to Christianity that early. I guess it took a really long time. Man, I love pikemen. Anyway, so discovery. In 2011, a hoard of coins and jewellery was discovered near Silverdale in Lancashire. Lancashire, England. One of the coins discovered in this hoard carries the name Erdekonat on one side and the letters DNS, an abbreviation of Dominus Rex, on the other. Dominus Rex translates as the Lord and King. Officials at the British Museum, also known as the biggest hoard of stolen goods in the world, have said the inscription Erdekonat might be a rendering of the Norse name Harthaknut. Experts from the museum have identified that the coin's design relates to coins of the kings Sigfredus and Knut, and Sigfrother and Knuter in Old Norse, probably butcher that, who ruled the Viking kingdom of Northumbria jointly between 895 and 905. The coin is also significant since it suggests Erdekonat was a Christian. The reverse inscription DNS, Dominus Rex, is arranged in a cross. This coin is the only piece of evidence for a ruler of Northumbria by the name of Harthaknut. According to Dr. Gareth Williams, well, I just lost a squad, curator of early medieval coins at the British Museum, the discovery of the existence of Erdekonat represents the first new medieval king in England discovered for over 50 years, and the first previously unknown Norse king discovered since 1840. So, this is actually kind of a big deal. Can you imagine being an early medieval peasant, be it Norse or English, like, ethnicity, I guess, and, like, there's a ruler, there's a king, and everyone knows him. He's the big cheese, so to speak. And then, imagine if you knew that, 2011, that he would be forgotten, and yay, we won, we defended the church, that he'd be forgotten and only remembered, so to speak, almost, like, 1,100 years later. That's nuts. How many other rulers have been forgotten? Because I'm used to the idea of, like, peasants being forgotten. Like, most people of the 120-odd people who have existed on this planet, most we will never know anything about them. Like, they're forgotten completely. They're lost in deep time. We don't even know what we don't know about them. So, I'm used to that, but the idea of a king, a ruler, being completely forgotten. That's humbling in a way, like even the famous and powerful fade from memory, I guess. Okay, historical background. It is likely that Erdiconat was one of several kings who shared power in Viking Northumbria at the start of the 10th century. The period was one of political instability. The ruling Vikings of Dublin were expelled in 902, and some of them came to England. Several of these later reigned over Northumbria as kings in York. There was much conflict between the Anglo-Saxons of Mercia and Wessex and the Vikings of Northumbria in this period. It culminated in the Battle of Tettenhall in 910, when a combined Wessexian-Mercian army dealt a decisive defeat to a Viking army raiding in Mercia, killing several northern kings, including Elois and Halfdan. I think I know about Halfdan. Ooh. I think I've heard about Halfdan from playing, like, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, of all things. Okay, so that's Erdiconat. Brief mention it. Next on the list, I'm going in alphabetical order, I guess. Aimlab Kinkairek. Alright, so that's hard to spell. So A-M-L-A-I, but with a funny thing over the I-B. And then C-N-N-C-A-I-R-E-C-H. Aimlab Kinkairek. I'm gonna call him Kenny. Aimlab Kenny was a Norse ruler and presumably king of Limerick, notable for his military activities in Ireland in the 1930s. Alright, so we've moved on a little bit in time, especially in the province of Connacht, and apparently even in Ulster and Leinster. This period, the 920s and 930s, is commonly regarded as the very height of Norse power in Ireland, and was when Limerick essentially equaled Dublin in power. Yeah, I restart this this island, by the way, because I'm on normal difficulty. I'm a wizard, I can do that. His epithet, Kinhairek, I can't pronounce that, is commonly translated into the unflattering scabby head, but this may be inaccurate. The adjective Kairek actually means, according to the dictionary of the... Yep, restart. According to the dictionary of the Irish language, criminal, guilty, sinful, and thus Kinhairek may be translated sinful head. That is a hell of an epithet. Oh boy. What have I done? Oh no, I hope I... Oh dear, I clicked the wrong thing. Is the microphone working? Yes, it is. Okay, career! You know, the career that Vikings have. Aimlab... I don't know what that is. Okay, I'm gonna look at what the hell this letter is. 13 letter... Alright, so 13 letter of the Karalkapak alphabet. The hell is that? Alright, so it pops up in a lot of things. So, how do you pronounce it? Acute. Okay, I don't know what that means. Acute accent. What does that mean? What does it mean? Syllable with a high pitch. Okay, so it'd be... Emlaib. Laib? Emlaib? I don't know. I don't freaking know. Okay, is mentioned only by name in the Annals of the Four Masters and Annals of Clonmacnoise. Historians believe the dating in both cases is off. In general, the sources for Western Islands history are not great. Well, nice to straight up hear it. The Chronicon Scotorum records several of the same and related events, but does not mention Aimlaib by name. Annals of the Four Masters. The Annals of the Four Masters are generally off by 2 years. Okay, so this is historical stuff. Alright, so I will read these out. Annals of the Four Masters. The victory. Alright, so this is quoting the text, by the way. The history of Dubhithra was gained by Emlail. Okay, I can't pronounce any of this. I'm gonna skip ahead. Basically, the idea is that what he was doing was compelling or recruiting Aimlab MacGodfrey. See, this is the fun thing about history, is like you read and keep reading and names pop up and you're like, who the hell is that? And then you're just like, who's that? And you need to read up on who this new person is. It's like the real life version of a, you know, very long running TV series. Except this particular thing is not on the TV, and it's been around, you know, it's been running for the last 12,000 years, at least. Okay. What the hell is happening here? Okay, so he appears in an Irish saga who gets killed by someone else. Alright, let's move on to the next guy, because those names gave me a headache. Nope, I'm skipping anything with an accent on it. We're going to the B section. Bagseg. Bagsikig. Okay. Oh, interesting. I'm seeing a theme here is that a lot of these historical Viking figures were involved in England. They either ruled or raided there. And I think that's just historical source bias in that England wrote things down at the time, and like the Scandinavian countries at the same time generally did not. So, or at the very least, I don't know, maybe it's a Wikipedia bias. It's like, it's a lot easier to read a source that's written in some form of English rather than, you know, Old Norse. Anyway, Bagsig, 830 to 871, 8th of January, also known as Baggesegg. That's a horrible word. Bagsecg, was a Viking and a leader of the Great Army, which invaded England. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Bagsegg, we'll pronounce him like that, and Heathen, Norse Halfdan, were joint commanders of the Great Army that invaded the Kingdom of Wessex during the Northern Winter of 870 to 71. So, interesting. We're back in time a little bit now. The Great Army is recorded as setting up camp at Reading and fighting the forces of Aethelred, King of Wessex, in several engagements during 871. At one of these, the Battle of Ashdown, Bagsig and 5 Viking earls were killed. After Bagsig's death, Heathen seems to become the sole leader of the Great Army. He was the principal leader when the Vikings overwintered in London in 871 to 72. In addition, 3 other Viking kings had emerged by 875, according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Some of these may have been elevated to kingly status as a consequence of Bagsig's demise. During the 18th and 19th centuries, Bagsig was erroneously associated with Wayland Smithy, a Neolithic long barrow in South Oxfordshire. A folk legend arose that the barrow was his tomb or a memorial to Bagsig. Likewise, other prehistoric sites in south-central England, such as the Seven Barrows, have been erroneously regarded as memorials to those who fell at the Battle of Ashdown. Yeah, probably wouldn't be this doesn't come from the Neolithic period. Alright, so origins and name. Bagsig's origins are obscure. He is one of the first Vikings to be named by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. He and Heathen are the... Heathen are the first principal Viking leaders attested by all versions of the source after the Great Army's arrival in Wessex. Nothing further is known regarding Bagsig's background. That tends to be the case for historical figures in the early medieval period. Is just, we know jack diddly of their life before they started doing interesting stuff and, like, you know, burning people's houses down and things like that. The precise historical phonology and etymology of the name Bagsig, I think I pronounce that differently every single time, are also obscure. It appears only in sources relating to this particular historical individual in England during the 9th century. By comparison, Heathen clearly corresponds to the relatively common Old Norse name Halfdan, meaning half-Dane. Surviving sources give many different forms of Bagsig's name. The A version of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle gives Bagsig and Bagsegg. The B version gives Bagskeg. The C version gives Bagsegg. Oh, jeez. Alright, so there's a long list of names with variable spelling and probably variable pronunciation as well. I'm not going to read all that. Like, if you're really nerdy, I'm literally reading off Wikipedia. Type in B-A-G-S-E-C-G, you'll find it. Let's skip ahead to the Great Army, which links to a main article, the Great Heathen Army. So, read the full article of that, or not? Let's read about the Great Heathen Army, because you know, that is cool. That's a cool thing. I frickin' love pikemen in this game, by the way, and it's really annoying that they're not arrow-proof. I would use nothing but them if that was the case. The Great Heathen Army, also known as the Viking Great Army, was a coalition of Scandinavian warriors who invaded England in AD 865. Angry Dog, also known as Anno Domini. Since the late 8th century, the Vikings had been engaging in raids on centers of wealth, such as monasteries. The Great Heathen Army was much larger and aimed to conquer and occupy the four kingdoms of East Anglia, Northumbria, and Wessex. The name Great Heathen Army is derived from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The force was led by 3 of the 5 sons of the semi-legendary Ragnar Lodbrok, including Halfdan Ragnarsson, Ivar the Bonus, and Ubba. The campaign of invasion and conquest against the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms lasted 14 years. Surviving sources give no firm indication of its numbers, but it was described as amongst the largest forces of its kind. So, fun fact, these names are vaguely familiar to me because I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I know that, that game's not very good, and it takes extreme liberties with historical accuracy. But yeah, they mention these guys by name, and of course you meet them and make friends with them, sometimes kill them, etc., etc. The invaders initially landed in East Anglia, where the king provided them with horses for their campaign in return for peace. They spent the winter of 865 to 866 at Thetford before marching north to capture York in November 866. There's a very handy map here, by the way. Never mind, it's not a handy map. I can't tell what's going on with it. York had been founded as the Roman legionary fortress of Eboracum and revived as the Anglo-Saxon trading post of Irfurwyck. During 867, the army marched deep into Mercia and wintered in Nottingham. The Mercians agreed to terms with the Viking army, which moved back to York for the winter of 868 to 869. In 869, the Great Army returned to East Anglia, conquering it and killing its king. The army moved to winter quarters in Thetford. So, one thing I want to just point out here, which is just the notion of wintering. So, us people here in the 21st century, our concept of war is a little bit different to pre-industrial peoples because of industrialization and factory farming and our food preservation technology and all that stuff, and also because of, we don't rely so much on an annual harvest and that's your food for the whole year. I mean, we do, but we don't. The concept of total war is a relatively new one, so whenever you read a source like this and it's talking about armories, spending the winter somewhere, it's because in winter, especially in Northern Europe, you basically were not able to fight. It just wasn't feasible. It wasn't worth it. If you were trying to move around in the winter, logistics became so difficult, and food was, much harder to come by, and it's just best to hole up, save your energy, save your supplies, and just try not to lose all your dudes to frostbite and illness and stuff like that, because an army on the move in winter was very vulnerable. You couldn't move fast, you couldn't see ahead of you. Just basically, winter was quite often unofficial truce. That's not quite right, but it's a helpful lie to understand it, I guess. When they did fight in winter, it tended to be just bad for everybody, including the attacker and defender a lot of the time. So anyway, that's just a note. In 871, the Vikings moved on to Wessex, where Alfred the Great paid them to leave. That's another thing that recurs a lot in history, rulers paying barbarian invaders to please bugger off. That's, it kind of works, it never seems to work out in the long run, which is why, just so everyone's aware, appeasement generally doesn't do the trick. It basically is you know what, this is great, this is basically taxes. We rule you now. The army, the Great Heathen Army, then marched to London to overwinter in 871 to 872. The following campaigning season, the army first moved to York, where it gathered reinforcements. This force campaigned in northeastern Mercia, after which it spent the winter at Torksey on the Trent close to the Humber. There's lots of fun words reading reading about historical stuff. Humber. Oh, there we go. The following campaigning season, it seems to have subdued much of Mercia. Burgred, the king of Mercia, fled overseas, and Ceolwulf, described in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle as a foolish king's thane, was imposed in his place. The army spent the following winter at Repton on the Middle Trent, after which the army seems to have divided. One group seems to have returned to Northumbria, where they settled in the area, while another group seems to have turned to invade Wessex. By this time, only the kingdom of Wessex had not been conquered. In May of 878, Alfred the Great defeated the Vikings at the Battle of Edington. Edington? And a treaty was agreed whereby the Vikings were able to remain in control of much of northern and eastern England. So that's where the Dane law comes from, and it's where... I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but basically the whole idea is that the northern part of England was basically conquered by Scandinavians, and that influenced the language, the place names, the laws for a long time, and that only kind of changed later once those areas fully converted to Christianity, and England managed to bit by bit get more united as time went on. Hell, I think it was like... Nah, like England was under one king by the time William the Conqueror showed up, and then he became that king, so... Yeah, the real king is the one who gets crowned. Who would have thought... The irony is, as well, is that the Vikings tried to conquer England, and they half succeeded, half failed, but in the end, it was a king, it was a Norman duke of Viking descent, because the Normans were of Viking descent. They were descended from Danes who settled in Normandy. Well, I don't think it was called Normandy. I think it got named Normandy after they settled there, because Norman literally, like, it comes from, like, the French term for Northman. The Northmen settled there, so that's, like, Norman. Like, Normandy. That was a tangent. Okay, Okay, so that's the Dane Lord. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle does not mention the reason for this invasion. Perhaps because Viking raids were fairly common during that period of time. Alright, so they basically didn't question it. It's like, you know, these friggin' heathens, they just, you know, they come and they kill and they conquer and all that kind of stuff. The tale of Ragnar's sons, on the other hand, mentions that the invasion of England by the great heathen army was aimed at avenging the death of Ragnar Lodbrok, a legendary Viking ruler of Sweden and Denmark. I nearly said Sweden. What the hell is Sweden? In the Viking saga, Ragnar is said to have conducted a raid on Northumbria during the raid of King Aila. The Vikings, I think that's pronounced Aila, that doesn't look like an A. The Vikings were defeated and Ragnar was captured by the Northumbrians. Aila then had Ragnar executed by throwing him into a pit of venomous snakes. Supposedly, I was just reading this earlier. There's no way of confirming that that happens. Also, what poisonous snakes? Like, England is not exactly known for having a lot of those. Adders, maybe? Snakes. When the sons of Ragnar received news of their father's death, they decided to avenge him. By conquering the bloody whole of England. My goodness. Alright, backgrounds. Alright, so we moved on from actually talking about historical figures to, like, the invasion itself. Viking raids began in England in the late 8th century, primarily on monasteries, which were fat and undefended and delicious. That's a weird way to describe it. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle entry for AD 787 reports the first confrontation with the Vikings in England. Ooh, I was thinking about looking this up, like the very first, like, mention of Vikings in, like, an English historical source. This is great. AD 787. This year, King Bertrick took to wife Eadburga, King Offa's daughter, and in his days first came 3 ships of Northmen out of Heathen, or Denmark. And then the reeve rode to the palace and would have driven them to the king's town, because he knew not who they were. And then the reeve rode to the place, and would have driven them to the king's town, because he knew not who they were, and they there slew him. These were the first ships of Danishmen which sought the land of the English nation. Well, that's a hell of an entrance. It's just you show up, you burn a monastery's ass. Burn a monastery's ass? I'm terribly sorry, I am not doing the talkie-talkie very well. This incident is regarded by some as the first raid on England, or at the very least, it would be the first recorded raid. Aethelred's version of the Chronicle, known as the Chronicon Aethelwerdi, is a slightly different version of events, saying that the Reeve, a certain BorderRRR, had spoken to the visitors in an authoritative tone, and this is why they killed him. Alright, they're like, hey man, mind your tone. The designation of these Heathenlanders as Danes is somewhat problematic. Sara Maria Ponsans, I'm presuming that's a historian, states, in Analysis of the Scandinavian Loanwords in the Altradian glosses to the Lindisfarne Gospels, whoo boy, that's a mouthful, that they were either men from... Wow, I can't even begin to pronounce that. Thankfully they have an alternative. That there were either men from Hardcessel in Jutland, so actually Danes, or from Horthaland in Norway. So in that last case, the word Danish refers to all Scandinavian people. They did do that in ye old early medieval period. They did basically lump, you know, all Scandinavians into one big lump. Can you imagine a giant big lump of Vikings just rolling around pillaging things? That would be terrifying. Rolling around like a giant Katamari. If someone has not made that game, someone absolutely should. It's just like, it's Katamari, but you're rolling up Vikings to, like, crush monasteries and farms. That's so stupid, but also so funny. Okay. The first monastery to be raided was in 793 at Lindisfarne. Oh, I know that name! I thought that sounded familiar. Off the northeast coast. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle described the Vikings as heathen men. I mean, that's accurate. Monasteries and minster churches were popular targets as they were wealthy and had valuable portable objects. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle for the year 840 says that Aethelwulf of Wessex was defeated at Carhampton, Somerset, after 35 Viking ships had landed in the area. The Annals of St. Burton also reported the incident, stating, "The Northmen launched a major attack. In 3 days, the Northmen emerged the winners, plundering, looting, slaughtering, and controlling the land." Interesting. 35 ships. That's a lot of dudes. That's a lot of dudes coming to kill ya. Despite this, Aethelwulf had some success against the Vikings. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle has repeated references during his reign of victories won by ealdormen with the men of their shires. However, the raiding of England continued on and off until the 860s, when instead of raiding, the Vikings changed their tactics and sent a great army to invade England. This army was described by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle as a great heathen army. Wow, I cannot... That is literally Old English there that I cannot speak. So, what I'm gathering from this is that the infamy of the Vikings comes from quite a brief period of history, actually. Like, Lindisfarne was raided in 793, and the Viking Age was pretty much done by 1066, or at least that's the cutoff point that historians usually announce it as, because it's like the last time a Viking army was assembled and fought on English soil, so to speak. So yeah, interesting. So, damn it, we only have a few seconds left. So, I'm going to skip ahead to the very end, to the aftermath of the Great Heathen Army. Alright, so... Sorry for skipping this over, it's just because the video's running out of time. I should have recorded more footage for this. By 896, the Viking army was all but defeated and no longer saw any reason to continue their attacks and dispersed to East Anglia and Northumbria. Those that were penniless found themselves ships and went south across the sea to Seine, to the Seine. Oh, this influx of new settlers helped consolidate the ever-growing establishment of Danelaw. Anglo-Saxon England had been torn apart by the invading Great Heathen Army, and the Vikings had control of northern and eastern England, while Alfred and his successors defended their kingdom and remained in control of Wessex. So, that cut off quite sharply. I apologize for that. Let me know if you want to see more of this, because, like, Bad North is great background for reading about Viking shenanigans. It's just so much fun, and I'm learning stuff. In particular, that, the first name we read, Erdekonat, the fact that, like, you could have a king who the only, like, basically the only thing we know about him now is that his name is inscribed, like, on a single coin, and we know almost nothing else about him. That's humbling. Like, whenever you're trundling through life, on the one hand, you are almost certainly to be forgotten no matter how famous or powerful you end up being, because who knows? You watching this right now, especially if you're a young person, you could do great things. Like, and you should try to do great things. Interesting things, at least. But in about, you know, 1,000 years or so, odds are pretty good most people will never have heard of you, and the only remaining record of you could be something as small as a coin just found in the ground. So, on that cheery note, thank you all so much for watching. Please like and comment, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in whatever game comes next. Let me know if you want me to do more Bad North Viking history things, because this is quite fun. Farewell!